All right. My name's Zack. I'm from Kennebunk, Maine. I'm going to be a junior feb next semester. I study geography and theater. And one thing I was interested before coming down here is how people kind of construct the identity of places. So when we think of specific regions or we think of specific names of places, we have ideas about those places that are kind of ingrained in the name. So you think about, for example, when I think about my home, Kennebunk, I think about the beach, I think about home, I think about the Blueberry Plains, which are these beautiful fields that I live nearby. And so my interest in what I wanted to explore was how we tie in food to those ideas of place, or how we create an identity of place through food. So I was doing a little bit of research before. So mine wasn't. It's a fifth day, but it's also kind of a process that I've been going through down here. So I was sorry. Excuse me. I was doing a little bit of research and I came across this concept of terroir. I believe is how you pronounce it. It's Terroir. Someone who studies French could probably pronounce it better than I could, but originally it was a term that is associated with wine, which is used to identify the region from which it came, but more recently people are associating it with other food products to denote the uniqueness of these products based on the place where they were grown or where they were produced. So kind of in practice what that means is that it's a combination of the environmental impacts and the people impacts on this food that gives it a unique flavor or just kind of a unique quality based on the place that it was produced. So kind of these people impacts and these environmental impacts can include things like soil type, climate, topography, proximity to water, for environmental things to begin with. And as far as, I'll give it a second. Here. And as far as people impacts go, those things can include things like how a product was harvested, how it was manufactured, how the farmer decided to irrigate it, what products grew in proximity to it. So all these things can kind of work together to create a uniqueness of any sort of plant or food product that is grown. So to kind of give you a general example of that, I'll talk about the founding of Louisville. So when Louisville was first founded, it was founded on a fertile island in the middle of the Ohio River, and those grounds were extremely fertile. So the settlers of that area decided that they wanted to plant there. And going along with that, there is a rich supply of limestone filtered water, which is iron-free. And the settlers brought with them the ability to grow corn, along with the ability to make whiskey. So the combination of these things started in Louisville, in the Kentucky area, a large whiskey production since Louisville was founded. So that kind of started the bourbon production in the United States and specifically in the Kentucky area. So it was the combination of the climate that was good for corn growing, the soil that was good for corn growing, but along with the knowledge that the settlers had, so that's kind of the people impact. And also, there's this kind of interesting thing I saw about bourbon was how it became aged. So farmers harvested corn in the summer months and they started to make whiskey in the fall, but they couldn't ship the whiskey down the Ohio in the winter because it was too cold, or in the spring because the rain water made the waters too crazy. So they had to wait until the winter and the spring passed to ship the whiskey down to places like New Orleans or Mississippi. And once they did ship it, it would take a couple weeks to a month. So by the time the whiskey got to its destination, it had been sitting in the barrels for 6 months or even more. So that's how the aging process started, because when they would sample these whiskeys, it would actually taste better and it would have the caramel color to be a lot smoother. So that's just another way this kind of concept of terroir plays into this example of bourbon. So it's the environmental impacts, the environmental things of why they grew corn in the first place, the fact that the settlers knew how to grow corn, and this aging process that was just a matter of necessity. So that's kind of an example of one thing that people relate to Louisville is bourbon. That's a food product that we associate with Kentucky and with the Louisville area. So there are other products like that out there. So if you think of Vermont, you think of maple syrup. If you think of Maine, you think of blueberries, and you also think of lobster. There are endless examples of that. And I found that in Europe, it was interesting that there are these regulations that kind of that regulate specifically in wine. They denote regions, and the regulations say that products can only be named a certain thing if they come from these specific regions, and so that's associated with these historical traditions that kind of grew up in these regions that were then put into law to create the authenticity or to maintain the authenticity of these products. So the reason that didn't happen in the U.S. was that our country is pretty young, so we industrialized before we could create those traditions. So our food system was based more on how we can create lots of food and how we can create it efficiently and kind of mass produce it. So we didn't have those kind of niche products. So something that I think is really interesting is as we are looking at these local food movements and as we're kind of putting more importance on food that is grown close to us, we're kind of embracing the idea of terroir, and that the food that we're consuming, if it's from a closer radius, is going to have a specific flavor, or it's going to be specific varieties of food that you're able to produce. So I spent this comes to my fifth day, I spent an afternoon at Harvest prepping because I just wanted to get in a kitchen that really celebrated local products. And something that I learned from Harvest was that they source 80% of their food from local regions, and I feel that sometimes in the United States we can feel limited by the places that we're from, so we spend a lot of our lives trying to escape the places that we're rooted to because we feel limited by them. And I think something really cool at Harvest was that instead of feeling limited by their surroundings, they really embrace what those surroundings can provide and acknowledge that this uniqueness will provide an experience that you can't get anywhere else, and that's kind of what they hold on to, which I think is really interesting and something that we should look at moving forward. Honor what you can do in the place that you are. Eat good food.